We're recording live.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for checking out the show. Today, we are talking about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Our guest is an engineer and serial entrepreneur. In 2017, he set up farms to mine cryptocurrency. In his journey, he has evolved from miner to investor. Please welcome Ryan Mongan. Nice to meet you, Ryan. How you doing today, man?
Doing well, guys.
Yeah, it's awesome having you on. Ryan and I guess we've known each other for quite a while. We take part in an entrepreneurial conclave at MIT in Boston. And Ryan, a couple of years ago, Ryan was talking about blockchain and whatnot, and then he has become, he's a miner. He was mining Bitcoin and things, and I had no idea what the heck this was. And now, we're now in 2020, 2021, and it's really become quite something and all the talk. So I thought Ryan would be an awesome guest to have on our show, just to share his experience with it, because there's a lot of gray on the edges that we really don't understand yet, and Ryan's got some firsthand experience with some of it. But first, what we do on our show is we do something called Two Truths and a Lie, and I'm going to read a couple of things here, and Devin and I are going to have to guess which is the lie. Okay.
I almost forgot about this part. Yes.
Yeah, I bet you did. Yeah. That's where you hang out to dry here.
Right.
So, you ready, Dev?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. So number one, Ryan owns peacocks.
Oh, damn.
Never known anybody own peacocks. Okay. Ryan has never had a cup of coffee. That's crazy. Actually, you don't drink coffee, do you, Dev?
I don't drink coffee, no. But I've had a cup.
Yeah. Okay, and then another one here, third one. Ryan still owns his very first car.
Oh,
wow.
That's dope.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw one more in here because Ryan's a very humble guy. So Ryan finished in the top 10 at the World Championships. Oh my God, what's the triathlon championships. So finished the top 10 in the world championships for triathlon. So that's a fourth one there. I just threw that one in. So Dev, what do you think here? Which is not true?
I don't know. Owning the first car sounds awesome, and owning peacocks is even better. So I'm gonna go with never had a cup of coffee, because I think you've had a cup of coffee before.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, somehow it must have passed by your lips somewhere along the way. Maybe not.
Well,
I don't know.
Growing up, my parents were big coffee drinkers, the Folgers in a tin sort of coffee drinkers, right?
Yeah.
And the kitchen was right next to my bedroom. And so I was awoken every morning to fussing around and that smell. And I really didn't like the smell. So I never did it as like a teenager. And then it kind of became a thing. It's like, oh, you've never had coffee? And so, no. And so once it became a thing, it's like, okay, now I can't ever do it. Just so
right.
I have this little nugget of something that I carry around.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe that.
That's awesome. Oh, man.
Okay, so let's see. What do we got next here? What do you think?
Well, geez, I don't know, man. But I guess, do you not own peacocks?
We do have a lot of birds. We have chickens and turkeys, but we do not. I wouldn't have very happy neighbors, I think, if I had peacocks. There's some in the neighborhood, maybe half mile away, and we can hear them at night. It's like they are such a loud animal.
Oh, really?
Funny that my wife, she didn't know that this was going on, or that I had written this down. And just last night, she said, "Gosh, I'd like to get peacocks, but they're just way too loud." She said this last night, just unprompted, because she was like researching peacocks. I'm like, wow, we're kind of like we've got some wavelength going on here.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Oh, that's true.
My gosh, that's crazy. And you are an amazing athlete. I had to throw that in there because I know you're a very, very humble guy and you never tell anybody, but you've done over like 100 races. That's triathlon?
Yeah, a little bit more than 100 triathlons.
Yeah. Is there Ironman thrown in there with the I can't remember.
Yeah. No, I kind of like the shorter. to do 100 full Ironman, you're just going to be a
Yeah.
bloody pulp,
You
right?
have to be
I mean,
like Jack Daly to be a guy like that, I guess.
yeah, I like the shorter stuff.
Yeah.
You can do these sprints, takes an hour, you're home for lunch, that sort of stuff.
Maybe you're home for lunch. I'm in the hospital. So yeah, so I mentioned a little bit earlier. Devin said that. So in 2017, I remember we were chatting. We were in the same focus or forum group, and you mentioned something about mining cryptocurrency, and I believe it was Bitcoin, and you had set up some I guess server farms, and you were actually like, I think you got to a point where you're actually flying to China and you were sourcing computer components to get it cheaper so you could build more and bigger of these mining server farms. So how the heck did you, like, what twigged you? I mean, this is going back quite a ways, right?
Yeah, it was a little bit, and it wasn't actually Bitcoin. It was Ethereum.
It was Ethereum. Oh, it was Ethereum from the beginning.
Yeah. So
Okay,
we
yeah.
kind of were talking, and this buddy of mine, he introduced me to the whole thing, and then I started, the deep dive. I started reading, started trying to learn as much as I could, and listening to not so much in podcasts at the time, but people doing YouTube videos on what is this, and
Yeah.
kind of locked in on Ethereum,
Mhm.
otherwise known as Ether or ETH.
Yeah.
As like, this has even more utility than Bitcoin. Bitcoin being the first cryptocurrency in modern times. I guess there have been some others back in the 90s and things that kind of operated as such. But Ethereum is commonly referred to as the number 2 cryptocurrency. And, it's oftentimes those number 2s that, come to be dominant players in so many things in life, in an industry. And it definitely has a lot more utility and a big development team working on it. And it's got a planned path. And Bitcoin is more static in what it has been and will be. Great, amazing thing, but we kind of saw more value in Ethereum. And then, yes, we started acquiring lots of equipment and put them in a warehouse. And then eventually the equipment became really hard to source in the US because a lot of people were doing it.
Right.
And so I traveled to China somewhat frequently and talked to manufacturers, and then had a trip that I was looking specifically at sourcing equipment directly. Not much easier there because a lot of mining was going on in China, and other people had the same idea.
Wow.
So we mined for a bit until what they call the crypto winter happened, and prices came down. I should say the value of it dropped to the point that it was more expensive from a power standpoint to mine it than the value of the crypto.
Right.
So it's like, how much do you believe? How much are you willing to go out of pocket every month? And eventually we did shut the mine down. And then the equipment was aged. So even if we were to restart, it would be difficult to mine at that point because there's newer equipment. We'd have to kind of throw into the pot again, re-ante to do it. So.
Wow. So there's one thing that you said there just a minute ago between Bitcoin and Ethereum was utility. So what exactly do you mean by utility? I've heard of, smart contracts and all these things that you're able to set up, but what is utility? What exactly do you mean by that?
When Bitcoin was started, it was really started as a peer-to-peer currency, something that I could transact with you. I'd like, look at that guitar in the background. Can I buy that off you? And I would just send you some Bitcoin, right? And you send me the guitar. Peer-to-peer, no or very minimal transaction fees. That's inherent to just about all cryptocurrency. We can talk about that later.
Sure.
But you hear now the people talk about crypto as similar to gold, right? It's a it's a store of value, not so much a currency. And that's because those transaction fees are going to, and they have been climbing. So it is going to be costing a little bit more for me to send you that Bitcoin. So people are generally who are using and not investing in it. Big difference there. If they're using Bitcoin, they're using it as a store of value. Like
Yes.
all of what you own probably is denominated in Canadian dollars or US dollars, right?
Exactly.
One of those two things.
Yes.
And so a lot of people see like, hey, maybe there's some value of having some assets that I own, not denominated in those currencies, but not denominated in something else. Bitcoin is kind of a natural for that.
Right.
Then Ethereum comes along and says, hey, this is a really secure way to transact. Why don't we do more than just make it transact as currency? Why don't we have a contract set up between the two of us where if I complete something and it's validated by the entire blockchain, the entire network of Ethereum miners, they say, yep, that happened, and a transaction occurs. So those are smart contracts. You can set something up with rules to govern a trade.
Right.
And that's what you also hear in the news, these non-fungible tokens, these NFTs. Those are smart contracts built on the Ethereum network. So that Ethereum, you can almost think of it as, in internet jargon, maybe it's TCP/IP. It's this protocol that is going to be built upon by developers who want to, I have an idea and I have a way, the new killer app that is secure and, there's no possibility of fraud on it.
Right.
Seems like a lot of people are building that and they're focused on building it on the Ethereum network. And that capability doesn't exist on Bitcoin's blockchain.
So do you think there's a potential for in the future that like near future or far off future that these cryptocurrencies could potentially take over like the traditional banking methods and stuff? How we just view and use money?
I don't know what's going to happen. But it just seems like there's some really new powerful tool that has surfaced.
Yeah.
And, Nigel and I are old enough to remember the start of the internet and how things were before that. And that was an incredible tool that surfaced. And what was like everybody talking about when the internet started? What can you do with this? Well, we can put the newspaper online and you can read it on your computer. Like that was the big use case, right? That, and we can put all the library books can be online. Yeah. Those were the use cases that people were thinking about. Like I can put my recipes on my computer and share it maybe. The killer app, say, of if you want to call social media the killer app of the internet in the first couple decades.
Sure.
No one thought that. Who knew, right? There were a couple of people in the world who probably had that in their brain, right?
Yeah,
and so I just don't know the killer app for cryptocurrency. I don't think it's currency. That's what people think like out of the gate, like, oh, I'm going to transact in this and not pay taxes. Like wrong. Do not get into cryptocurrency because you think you're going to avoid taxes. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The government is going to get their slice of you, whatever you transact in. You can transact in goats and they'll come by and they'll take a couple goats. Right. But so I don't think it hasn't been written yet. And so that's why I'm excited by it. And I'm trying to keep my ear to the ground and see what's happening and just be present. You have to be present to win. Right.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not about trading. It's not about an investment. Mm-hmm. This is about like, wow, this is a new tool and I want to learn as much as I can about this tool and be along on the journey.
Right. Right. I mean, you mentioned, we had a chat the other day, and you mentioned a couple of things. You said, humanity has gone through these different evolutions of, with technology. We went from having the automobile to the airplane, and those changed our lives dramatically. And then we went from that to, the computer, and then to the internet, and then to to Apple, and what they brought to the world, and the iPhone and the iPad and everything else, and that kind of revolutionized. So this as a as a currency, yes, that's one thing, but what else, is it going to change us again, just like those did? That's the big question.
Right. It's
Possibly.
about, yeah. And all those things you mentioned, they created more personal power,
Right.
personal freedom, personal power. Pre-car, airplane, you just didn't have the power of movement. You'd be very wealthy. A lot of people lived in the same town their whole life. They just didn't have the power to move anywhere.
Right.
Computing gave people, power over not necessarily information, but power to conduct commerce. You could say, computing power.
Yeah.
And of course, internet is information. So what gives people power? And it seems like this with the smart contracts could give people a lot of power. And we also talked about, genomic, human genome and all that, that gives you maybe power over your health, power over your family's health. If that, that's kind of also in this nascent stage of development where people hear about CRISPR, hear about, doing things at the gene level, and it's scary, but I don't think the killer app on that has been written yet either.
Right.
So who knows? But those are a couple, and then there's AI, right?
Then there's AI. Yeah, there's a couple of new things
in that stage of scary, don't know what it's all about.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is exactly the same it was with the automobile. People, I don't want to, I would rather be on my horse. And then the same thing, this internet thing. Ooh, we had the dial up and the screeching, and that's scary. And now we're here, and you talk about, that's one thing now is power. So power, you kind of stepped out of the mining side of it because of energy, power, and the energy side of it. And then in the past few weeks here, this whole talk about the, cryptocurrencies, using more than, the power of Denmark or something, the whole country, and the amount of power. So then things have kind of had it's a bit of things shook a little bit,
Yeah, that's of course, I think, demonizing it by people who have ulterior motives. You look at who's talking about that, and oh, it's somebody who's really into Wall Street, and really into oh, they take a skim off every trade, or they work for T. Rowe Price. They're really, are you a neutral party?
Yeah.
You think about okay, let's compare Bitcoin to gold and its environmental impact. I don't see any mountains being pulverized to dust looking for Bitcoin. Right? There is a tremendous environmental impact to gold mining.
Sure.
Just the chemical, and just direct environmental impact. And then once you have it, okay, where do you keep it? You got to have institutions. You've got to have a vault. You've got to make things. You've got to make physical things to hold physical things.
Yes.
With crypto, it could all be in your head, or you can, the most physical thing to hold your crypto might be a little hardware wallet that you have, a little USB drive. So the footprint environmentally is, I think, tips in favor of cryptocurrency, not the other way around. Right. Yes, there is a cost to the power of mining, that's for sure.
Sure.
But people don't want to pay for power either. All those miners are trying to figure out ways to do it renewably, solar and geothermal, and they're all looking to make it, renewable, because it's just cheaper for them.
That's of course. Yeah.
Of course. Now, another thing that Ethereum has in spades over Bitcoin and many of the other, is how this mining works. We can talk about what is mining in the first place. But with Bitcoin and the way Ethereum initially started, it was called a proof of work blockchain.
Right.
So all these computers are all trying to solve this very complex math problem. And whoever solves it gets the reward of some newly minted cryptocurrency.
Right.
So because all these computers are fighting to solve this problem, every computer is working on the same problem, and therefore it's pretty inefficient. You have thousands and hundreds of thousands of computers doing the same thing.
Okay.
Now, Ethereum is in the middle of a process to transition from proof of work, POW, to proof of stake, POS.
Okay.
And once that is complete, probably in the next 2 years, they're hitting milestones and making that go along, then that energy intensiveness drops off to very small. And why you're doing this in the first place is to provide security for the blockchain. There has never been an instance of fraud on the Bitcoin blockchain, ever.
Okay. Wow.
Like you talk about fraud in the fiat currency system or even in gold, there's,
Wow.
there's whole TV shows about this, about fraud and like, this. There's never been an instance of fraud because of the way it was envisioned and this proof of work. So once proof of stake happens, you actually have to stake, in the Ethereum's case, 32 Ethereum, Ether. And that ensures that you're not trying to do something nefarious, because if you said, oh, I spent some Ether over here and I spent the same Ether over there, the rest of these, what they call validators, would say, that's not right. We're not going to acknowledge that. And you lose your stake in the game.
Right.
And to actually, in all of these situations, to create a fraud, you'd have to have 51% of the computing power or of the validators. Right. And that is such a large number at this point for these mature blockchains and cryptocurrencies that it's just economically not feasible for even a country to do, to get 51, because it's so, it just takes so much resources, so many assets to create fraud on these blockchains. Smaller cryptocurrencies, ones with very little adoption, that's still a problem for them until they get to scale.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
You hear about that. If you look at the history of like some of these smaller ones like Bitcoin,
Dogecoin here.
Dogecoin.
No,
I know it's
like gone.
If you have a fork or, people, you can generate, there's, 5,000, 10,000 cryptocurrencies. I mean, you could make one yourself.
Right.
I could come in and overpower you and take it all, but it has no value. There's no value anyway until people say there's value.
Yeah. So I just want to like an example here with a sort of a smart contract. Say, would this be or could be used for something? Say you're bringing in container loads of product from somewhere, China, Argentina, wherever it is. And, the banking system, for me and my business, we do letters of credit and we issue a letter of credit, and there's so many checks and balances and it's in the banking system to, so you can get your product and they can get paid, et cetera. The supplier can get paid. Would you be able to use something like this, like say Ethereum, to do a contract like that?
Yeah, that's very feasible. I don't know anybody who's doing that particular use model yet.
Yeah.
And so, and it'll probably happen on the fringes at first, somewhere where, like, say, factories in some country get, nationalized or something, and they're like, oh, we just need to still transact in a currency that we can both agree upon, and that, it might be something like that, where it kind of comes to be a contract like that, and we transact in something like a Bitcoin or something like that.
And then, but the only thing is there's a risk of the currency is going like this right now. One day it's X amount, and the other day it's 20% down.
If you price it in,
if you want to agree
Canadian dollars, I mean, but like And I do look, of course, I look at the price of these coins in fiat currency, but more often I'm looking at the price of ETH in Bitcoin.
Right.
Because yes, it's like, Elon Musk tweeting something, and of course all crypto moves, but I'm like really curious to see how ETH, because I believe in it. I believe in cryptocurrency for the long term.
Yeah.
I believe there's utility in it.
Yes, that's the thing.
Am I believing, because there's so many, like, it's like a world of 5,000 languages. Which language are you going to become proficient in? Am I choosing the right one? And so I'm looking at, and the original, the original is Bitcoin. So I'm pricing these and looking at it in terms of Bitcoin more often than in terms of US dollars, because I'm not trading.
Right. Yeah. You're not trading. Yeah. Sorry, Deb, do you have a question there? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just had a thought. So, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but so there's a finite amount of Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. But then Ethereum there isn't. So do you ever see there being like a hard cap on Ethereum, and what would that do?
Now, I might be misstating this, but I believe there is a hard cap on Ethereum.
Oh,
Some
there is.
cryptos don't. Like Dogecoin, I don't believe has a hard cap. Once they issue, there's another tranche that comes in. I think I haven't really looked into Dogecoin very much because it's kind of hastily put together, was put together as a joke.
Yeah.
I just don't see it as, and it's very similar to Bitcoin. It's always going to be proof of work and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, there is, like with Bitcoin, there is a finite number, and there's a long tail that happens over time. And those are the rewards, the equivalent to a central bank, issuing fiat currency to one of these large banks. They give money to the large banks. They're lending it to them, but at a cost that's, effectively a gift. And then those large banks lend out to other mid-sized banks or other large banks. And then eventually kind of the new money supply, M6 in the US or something like that, trickles down to all the people. Mm-hmm. Well, there is no central bank for Bitcoin. There is no governing authority. There is no focus, which is kind of nice. There's no target because of that. Mm-hmm. They are going to issue these coins, but who do they issue them to? They issue them to the miners, because the miners are doing this work to provide security for the blockchain. Uh-huh. Well, the supply that's being issued dwindles over time. So you could say, well, gosh, for the miners to keep doing that work, the price better go up. Well, that is true because they'll stop doing the work, right? If they're not getting any value. But there is a small transaction cost for each transaction you do in these cryptocurrencies. And that transaction cost also goes to the miners over a long period of time. So you could see, like, even if the price stabilizes and doesn't keep rising in fiat currency value, these miners are still incentivized to keep doing the work, because if there's lots of transactions happening, they're getting a sliver off each of those transactions.
Wow. Okay.
So it's called gas in a lot of, like in the
gas.
Ethereum world, it's called gas.
Gas. Okay. So now we go way back, say with Bitcoin, and there was this Satoshi. We don't even know who it is, right? So there's a little bit of mystery behind this whole thing, right? So many Bitcoins were put into a electronic purse or something. And do you know anything about that? Like,
there's this he, she, them. No one really knows. Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper in 2008. I believe it's like 7 pages. You should really read it. It's approachable. There's a little bit of math in there, but it's a 7-page white paper that hits like all the high points of the challenges of cryptocurrency, the double spend problem, how it was going to be overcome. And it was, you talk about like giving a speech. If you can give a 3-hour speech, you could do it like right now, but to give a TED talk, 19-minute speech you have to really work on it, right? Yes. To nail it. That white paper was nailed. It's solid. So you should really check it out if you're interested in the
For
whole
sure.
thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that individual, let's say, introduced it. There was a little bit of chatter, continued to, this is a cryptographer.
Yep.
So in the cryptography community, they were talking and he was, he or she, I'll call her she. She was explaining and doing all this. And then after it started getting a little bit of traction in the cryptography community, she stepped away and like has the wallet that the initial coins that she mined went into hasn't been touched. There's been no, people have tried to find this individual to no luck. And this person's been quiet since I think the last communication was 2010. The person sent out.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So it's really interesting because you see like, love him or hate him, Elon Musk, when he makes a tweet, or Donald Trump or Joe Rogan, like it's an attack vector. It's something that people can point to and say, see, I told you this was a fraud or this was golden or whatever. Yeah. There is no, it's just math. It's the whole thing's, it's all been written. It can't be changed. And there's no person or flawed personality at the head trying to lead the charge. Right. And because of that, it's just like, you can't, governments say are having a difficult time, like kind of locking it down or creating a narrative that might be, not quite true because there is nobody, there is no attack vector.
Wow. My gosh. That's
awesome.
Yeah, it is. If you can't like I watched Saturday Night Live the other night, and Elon Musk was on there. And he's talking there, the whole Dogecoin thing, and then and all his little tweets about the energy, and then not taking crypto now or Bitcoin for the purchase of a Tesla, and then boom, the market changed instantly, right? So yeah, and so. I don't know if it's still the case. And I think it was with Bitcoin. People were saying that, you've got your account, you've got your Bitcoins or parts of Bitcoins. And, if you lose your password, you're pretty much hooped. And I think that happened to some people back in the early days. I don't know if that's still, is like how, so these days, what we've got, now on our phones, right here, I have an account, Devin and his brother Dylan, they got into some Ethereum there a few, couple months ago, right? And we have an app we can trade this stuff on.
Right. And you're probably using an exchange, like a Coinbase or something like that.
Exactly. So is this whole thing where, oh my gosh, if you lose your insignia, your password, is there
There's two very different things there. So you're not using, they call it a wallet.
A wallet,
a digital wallet where you store you're not owning your coins in your wallet.
Right.
You're owning them on Coinbase's wallet.
Yes, exactly.
So and Coinbase smartly, they're a layer. They're a layer sitting on top of cryptocurrency. Right. And you're not accessing your crypto directly. This is a popular, what they call a hardware wallet. It's a Ledger Nano S. It's a little USB stick that has some electronics and you put a code in. A wallet like that, you hold your cryptocurrency directly. And this whole thing is it's a new thing, right? It's a gravel road.
Sure.
Right. Okay. And then hopefully we're going along and someone's going to pave it one of these days and it's going to be less bumpy. It is very bumpy. If I lose this, it's like, oh, okay, now I have to go to my backup and my backup of my backup. And like, there's like, talk about, it's a risk. If I lose, my mind, I lose all my passwords, right? Yeah, it's gone. You do not have access if you're holding it directly. Now, with Coinbase, you might have some recourse. You say, oh, I forgot my password to Coinbase. Oh, okay, we'll send it to your email. Like, okay, I don't have that email anymore. Like, there's ways that Coinbase is going to help you out. Similar to like PayPal or something like that, right? They're going to help you out. It's not like you're out of luck entirely. But
They're popping up everywhere. All these Coinbase type trading things in there, and they're getting,
They're for traders. They're really for traders. Like
yeah.
I can change Ethereum to Bitcoin directly.
Oh,
Anybody can. If you're holding your own wallet without using an exchange, you can just use an online tool and you pay a little bit in that, like I said, that gas to do it.
yes.
But I'm not paying Coinbase, and it's like, hopefully the Coinbases of the world and whatever layer comes in after that
Yeah.
doesn't, I hope they don't kind of take over and institute fees to the level that we have right now. Like when you use a credit card, how much is that costing you to use a credit card?
Yeah. Right.
Well, a lot of people say nothing. I can just use the credit card at the store and I pay the same price as cash. Well, we all know there's the credit card processors, companies you've never even heard of.
Yes.
There's so many layers of these guys, and it costs about 3% or so to use a credit card.
Yeah.
And you say, well, I don't pay that. And yes, you do. All that comes back to you in the form of prices.
Right.
The company that you're buying something from
Supplier
has to look at their financial statements and they say, we need to make more margin. And one of the reasons is they're paying 3% to these processors.
Yeah.
And cryptocurrency, we're not talking like in the 3% range. We're talking, 0.01%
Yeah.
sort of range for a transaction fee. It's more power once again to the individual.
Right.
Right. And that drops the cost of everything by that, in theory, by that 3%. Like worldwide. That's fantastic. There's less grit in the system. It's just smooth transactions. Like,
yeah. Wow. That's just,
but it's difficult these days for me to transact smoothly directly with you. It would be hard, right?
Yeah,
We'd have to coordinate. I have to know your crazy address that's 40 characters long and all that. It's not easy.
Yeah. But again, like you said, it's like we're right at the beginning of it, and there's a lot of gray out. There's a little bit in the middle, but there's a lot of gray on the outsides.
A lot of gray,
right?
For sure.
And it's it's just like anything. We started the internet with dial-up. We thought this is the cat's meow. Wow, it can send, or the fax machine. Like the fax machine for me revolutionized. I used to use the telex. I used to get a ticker tape and dang, 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 dang. Punch in a ticker tape. Put the ticker tape in, dial a number in Singapore, and it would pop up on the other end, right? And then the fax machine came in where you could actually scan your documents and they would pop up in Singapore. That for me, that was like the biggest thing ever. And you'd have to have a DHL package, every day going to Singapore, right? So now with this, we're kind of, we're here. Who knows where the heck it's going to lead?
And that's what's really super exciting to me about just kind of like being present and just watching. And, I just want to be closer to the action. I was in Silicon Valley from, the start of the internet. I was there working 93, in the late, and then through the 90s and the early 2000s. And boy, it was exciting times.
Yeah.
And you would just be having these conversations in the supermarket line with people about oh, really? And you would just be learning about all this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Just because the environment was such that you couldn't have those conversations online because that didn't exist, right?
Right.
So you had to be, luckily I was in a community that we were all together and kind of doing very similar things. So those conversations were happening face to face. Now those conversations with the internet can happen at a distance, and I can be in a community of people trying to figure this out and just trying to listen in on those conversations of really smart people who are, what their projects are all about. And, and the face-to-face stuff still exists. There's meetups all the time in the crypto space where people get together in all communities. Sure, there's ones right around you guys that you can just go, and you have the noobs, and then you have the really experienced people, and they're just sitting in the same room. And it's like, I've been to some of those, and they're fascinating. It's a lot of fun.
Wow.
A lot of fun.
I know it is really an exciting time. And I know that because I know Devin, they're the young guys. Devin and his brother got into, we got this new trading platform called Wealth Simple or something, or Wealth Simple, and you can trade. And so they bought a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I thought, oh, that'd be cool. I want to kind of get in on it. So the three of us kind of do it together, just as an experience, right? And it's just really, really exciting. The crazy thing is, like, Ethereum and Bitcoin, they've been just going skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this isn't, okay, I'm gonna say it's not normal, but what goes up comes down. Typically it goes up and it comes back down. And it came back down. And it's, you and I have lived through this so many times. And I think there's so many young people that they got their phone, they got this new trading thing, and they're going, oh my God. And they're, putting a lot of stuff into it, but there's those ups and there's downs, and there's that learning process, and there's the smacks on the side of the head.
Yeah.
And
super valuable, right?
Yeah. It's super valuable to know that, so it's, yeah. So on that point, Dev, did you have anything like, do you have friends that are kind of into this, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just because it's so accessible right now. A lot of my buddies have started to get into this, and you're totally right. It's like a lot of these people have never seen any of these things before, right? Where everyone's like, "Oh, this is the jackpot. I'm gonna hit it. Let's put all my money into Ethereum," right? No, it's just good to talk about that and learn the experiences around these things and what this could potentially do for the future. And I think it's really cool. I just think it's really cool. And and exactly like you're saying, stay present. And that's a really good point. Just stay present with the whole thing. And
you can, of course, you can trade. I mean, but why? I mean, I don't know. You could trade anything, right?
Sure.
Why trade this? This is so interesting. I mean,
totally.
Go and trade some derivative, go and trade something, esoteric if you think something's going to move, based on the weather or whatever. This is kind of, right now, the spikes are all based on the news cycle, right? So, and what governments are doing and things like that. So how are you going to predict that? It's like, to be a trader, you kind of want that. The knowledge, you need to have the knowledge that nobody else has. You need to have the knowledge of something that's going to happen that nobody else knows. And that's where you are the winner, right? Somehow you see that storm is going to influence this crop, and you decide to buy futures of feeder cattle or something like that, some that has some really ripple derivative butterfly effect sort of thing.
In our day, it was pork bellies,
Right. Right. And I don't, it's really hard to have that knowledge in the crypto space, because it's kind of at a whim of an Elon Musk making a tweet.
Right. Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like a great place to be a trader right now. If trading is your thing, and that's somebody, some people, that's their thing.
Yeah.
And they make a career out of that. But I say, grab onto some of it. Yeah, watch the price, but learn about it. And that's the fun stuff, because this killer app hasn't been written yet. And boy, if you get in on that, the utility that really hockey sticks this thing, that's where it's going to be at.
Right. Yeah. I know, it's just fascinating. Yeah. So we're here, and, we'll probably have another chat, a year from now, and we'll probably look at all of it and go, oh my gosh, like, do we ever see that coming?
Right.
Because there'll be some other thing that'll, right. So yeah. I don't, that's just great. Deb, do you have any more questions there? Maybe we'll.
No, I'm just excited about that conversation that we're going to have a year from now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So that's great. Thanks so much, Ryan.
Sure thing.
If there's any other little tips or points or little things you want to throw out there?
Boy.
There's so much.
I would suggest, if you think you're going to hold on to some, I would have a next step. I would get your own hardware wallet. Try holding on to this stuff yourself rather than using a Coinbase or some Gemini or some other trading platform to hold it for you. Be your own fiduciary, try that, and see how that is. And you'll see it's not easy. But then you're kind of more in the ecosystem of it. You're kind of at the roots. You're a little closer to the roots. So I try to hold some of it, keep some in a Coinbase just for trading, be able to move back into whether it's fiat or tether currency, something that a lot of people use these stable coins as something to move into temporarily when they think something's going to change again without having to go into a fiat. And that's all very possible on these exchanges.
Right. So how do you get it directly? How do you get your own wallet? I know you've got a USB there with.
Yeah, there's a
you-
bunch, Trezor and Ledger. There's a bunch of what they call hardware wallets.
Right.
So I would just do a little research on hardware wallets.
Hardware wallets.
They're not very expensive. And then you have an address, and say you're holding everything in an exchange, you
Yes.
can transfer those coins out of the exchange to an address. And now you're holding them in the cloud. You're not,
Right.
it's not really on the USB drive. The
Yeah.
USB drive is your security device, your key to get into your house.
Right. Okay. Right.
So it's not like you lose that, you lose it, because there's ways I can buy another one and I can, reinstitute it and get access to it. That's the key to your house. So
Got it.
try to own your own keys.
Yeah.
Very,
Very, very, very cool. Very interesting. Wow. Well, thanks so much, Ryan. I guess,
Sure thing.
Dev, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah,
on
we're
that?
going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming on the show. If you guys would like to learn more about Ryan, we put all those links in the description. Other than that, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great conversation.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, guys.
Yeah. Thanks so much,